The rain hammered against the empty streets of Vienna, each drop a tiny echo of the crushing weight on Luca Moreau's heart. He was 26, sitting alone on a park bench, the paper in his hand now soaked and limp. It was a rejection letter, the death of a dream. "We regret to inform you that your design has been rejected. Thank you for participating." He read the words over and over, a desperate hope flickering that they might somehow rearrange themselves into something kinder. But they didn't. The world kept moving. Cars swished by, their headlights painting fleeting strokes of light on the wet pavement. But for Luca, time had stopped. Just a year ago, this same city had felt electric with possibility. He was the bright-eyed inventor, the boy from a small town who was going to build something that mattered, something that would change things. He'd poured every last bit of his savings, every waking hour, every ounce of his soul into his creation. Now, all of it, the invention, the money, the unshakable confidence, had vanished into the storm. He whispered to the indifferent night, the words barely audible over the rain, Maybe I'm just not good enough." The thought felt cold and final, a truth he could no longer outrun. Just as the despair began to settle deep in his bones, a gentle but firm voice cut through the downpour from behind him. "No, you're not done yet." Luca spun around, startled. Standing there, holding an umbrella that seemed to shield him from more than just the rain, was Elias Hartmann, his former professor, his mentor, the very man who had once looked him in the eye and told him with absolute certainty that he was destined to change the world. Elias walked over and sat down beside him, the space between them suddenly feeling warmer. "You know," he began softly, his voice calm and steady, "Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before his light bulb finally worked. 1,000 times. You failed once, and you're already preparing the funeral?" Luca's voice cracked, a raw mix of frustration and grief. "It's not that simple, Professor. It's not just one failure. I've lost everything." A faint, knowing smile touched Elias's lips. "No, Luca, you haven't lost everything. You've lost comfort. You've lost the safety net. And believe it or not, that's where real growth, real invention, truly begins." The words struck Luca with the force of lightning, a flash of clarity in his storm-filled mind. They sat in a profound silence, punctuated only by the distant roll of thunder. The rain continued its steady rhythm, washing the city clean. Then Elias reached into his old tweed coat and pulled out a small, worn notebook. Luca recognized it instantly. Inside were his own sketches, his frantic notes, the chaotic scribbles of his college-aged self, ideas he'd all but forgotten. "You gave this to me years ago," Elias said, his thumb tracing a complex diagram on one of the pages. "You told me it was your dream to build something that helps people, not just something that earns money or wins awards. You had a fire in you, a purpose. Where is that fire now?" Luca stared at the pages. It was like looking into a time capsule, meeting the younger version of himself, the one who hadn't yet learned the sting of rejection, the one who believed with every fiber of his being that he could make a difference, the one who hadn't given up. Something inside him, a tightly coiled spring of dormant resolve, snapped. He pushed himself up from the bench, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He looked out at the glittering, rain-slicked city and said quietly, with a newfound steel in his voice, "I'm not ending like this." The next 6 months were a blur. Luca worked like a man possessed. Days bled into nights, fueled by cheap coffee and an unyielding refusal to surrender. He didn't just fix his old design, he tore it down to its very foundation and rebuilt it from scratch. Each new attempt brought new failures, new frustrations, but this time he saw them differently. They weren't dead ends, they were lessons. They were guideposts pointing him toward the right path. He wasn't just building a machine, he was rebuilding himself. Line by line, circuit by circuit, failure by failure, he pushed forward, until one crisp morning, as the first rays of sun streamed into his workshop, it happened. The machine whirred to life. It didn't just function, it shined. When he stood on the stage to present his invention again, the air was thick with anticipation. This time there was no hesitation in his voice, only conviction. He explained not just how it worked, but why it mattered. When he finished the demonstration, There was a moment of stunned silence, and then the room erupted. The judges were on their feet. The audience was a sea of applause, but Luca's eyes weren't on them. They scanned the crowd, searching for one face, and he found him. In the back row, leaning against the wall, was Elias, a proud, quiet smile on his face. After the event, as the crowd thinned, Elias made his way through to the stage. He placed a hand on Luca's shoulder, his grip firm and reassuring. He looked him in the eye and said just one line, a line that would stay with Luca forever. "Now you understand. Failure was never the enemy. It was your teacher." Luca looked back at his mentor, tears welling in his eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude, not despair. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. "And this time, sir," he replied, his voice full of emotion, "I passed the lesson." As he stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The storm had passed. The city lights of Vienna reflected beautifully on the wet streets, no longer a reminder of his loneliness, but a mirror of his own inner light. And for the first time in a long time, Luca Moreau walked with his head held high, not because he had finally succeeded, but because he had refused to quit. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, remember that your own journey is filled with teachers, sometimes disguised as failures. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories that inspire. We'll see you in the next one.